Welcome to Veronica Live, and I'm here with Keith Gross. He's back. He's running to be my congressman here in Congressional District 2 in the Panhandle. And Keith, I've interviewed you so many times, even before you were running. So welcome back to Veronica Live.
Good to be with you.
Well, how's it going? I've had a lot of the candidates on, and last week, even Austin Rogers wanted to come back on. So I'm happy to host you because I know you're the front runner because guess what? Everybody always mentions Keith Gross. So how's the campaign going, Keith?
Well, it's been good. I'm really honored to have so much support all over the district. We're obviously working hard for it. That's something that I believe in. As you know, I've worked pretty hard for everything I've got in my life, and running for office is no different. I'm working hard for every vote. So it's great to see that paying off. It's great to see so much support, and we're going to keep working because this election's almost over. I've got a countdown clock, and it shows 36 days till polls close. We're going to stay on it.
Well, I love that. And you have been really sprinting around our huge district. So what have voters been telling you? Because if anybody ever does look at Congressional District 2, I feel bad for you candidates because it's like the biggest district, I think, in all of Florida, and it's so diverse. So tell me what voters are telling you, Keith.
Well, we're seeing a lot of support because they want someone who understands how to balance a budget. I think all of us, it's not new, it's happened for decades, but Congress has a spending problem. We know that they spend too much money. They take our tax dollars, they ship them overseas, they waste them here in our own country. They do a bad job of managing the budget. They always spend more than they take in. And that's why we see our national debt ballooning. Naturally, that leads to massive inflation. So that hits us all at the gas pump, at the grocery store. Things cost more than they should, especially when you look at it as a ratio of cost increases versus wage increases. In short, everything costs more and wages haven't gone up that much. This is the sort of thing we're going to have to tackle to make sure that the next generation has the same opportunities that prior generations did.
Well, I do love that. What do you think's prepared you more for Congress? You were in the military and the Army. You've been an attorney. You're a businessman that has been on fire with everything that you've touched. What do you think's going to prepare you best from your past experiences to lead in Congress?
I think my life has been a journey, and that journey has prepared me. I grew up in a family that had absolutely nothing, and through hard work and just a lot of time and a lot of hard work, I was able to live the American dream. And I've been blessed with a level of success that I could have only imagined when I was a young fella growing up. And that's really, I think, what's prepared me. I've dealt with some of the real world issues that face people at every level. I've dealt with the bureaucracy and how it slows down business growth. I've dealt with how it feels to scrape together, earning an hourly wage, and try to make sure that I can pay my bills. I've lived all of those things, and it's given me a very well rounded perspective on how broken our government is and what we need to do to change it.
And what are some of the hot issues that when you go up there that you're going to fight for? I mean, and you mentioned the budget, which is so frustrating because I mean, what is it, 39 trillion? It's probably more than that now. So what are your hot issues that you'll be trying to fight for our district, Keith?
It's about dismantling decades of decay, so the budget's obviously a large part of that because the bigger government gets, the less freedom we have as the people. So we need to scale down the size of the federal government. And that's where we really get into conversations about restoring constitutional values and restoring our federal government to the size it was supposed to be as laid out by our founding fathers. They expected most of the government that we work with to happen at the state level. If we were to scale down the size of the federal government, not only would we be restoring our freedoms, getting the government out of infringing our Second Amendment rights, restoring our Fourth Amendment rights by getting rid of things like flock and other things that are clearly invading our Fourth Amendment rights, but we would be scaling down the size of government so that it could be easily overseen. Because when you look at what happens now with the fraud and all of this waste, think about Minneapolis. The reason these immigrants are able to steal so much of our money from government grant programs is because these government grant programs are so numerous and so large. When the budget's that big, it's hard for anyone to oversee it. Congress needs to scale things down so that it's small enough they can do their job of oversight, stop the money from being wasted. If we do that, we can stop inflation, and that makes life more affordable for everybody. So it really all stems from money, as it should, I suppose, because if we think about the role of Congress, it was always to exercise the power of the purse. They've done a bad job. If we had more business people, maybe we could do a better job.
Yeah, well, I love that. Okay, and you mentioned apparently flock is a dirty word, Keith. And I've
It
got
should be.
well, I was kind of pro it until I read a story that you're mentioned in there, and I didn't realize. So this county that you and I live in, we have like 200,000 people, and I didn't know that there was 150 supposedly flock cameras around. That anytime I'm coming or going, it can follow me with my plate. Which I didn't realize it was 150. I thought it was like maybe one per bridge. That seems pretty excessive. I mean, I have nothing to hide, but I've been, I'm an influencer too when it comes to politics. So people have sent me that they're up in arms, and I didn't realize it was 150 cameras. So tell me your stance on this.
Well, it's really so much more than 150 cameras. It's a massive network, it's nationwide. And this isn't just on bridges, main highways, or something like that. They put them out in the middle of nowhere, out on back roads that you wouldn't think. They've made it so you can't really travel anywhere without being tracked full time. It's the rough equivalent of putting a GPS tracker on every person's car. That would be clearly unconstitutional. So they're trying to do an end run around the Constitution and say, well, limited expectation of privacy exists when you're on a public road. Well, that might be true of momentary observation or maybe observation of one road, but when you're observing every road all the time, it's tantamount to putting a GPS tracker on every person's car. And it's so much more than just your plate, Veronica. It tracks your car. So let's say you change your tag, it'll still see your car and know that it's just the same car with a different tag because it identifies a scratch on your bumper, the color of your car, a bumper sticker if you've got
Oh
one.
my
And it looks through
goodness.
your windshield and it sees you driving it. So it knows what other cars you drive. It knows if someone else drives your car and where they go. This leads to mass surveillance. And that's exactly what our founding fathers intended to prohibit when they wrote and ratified the Fourth Amendment. There's not some reasonable expectation that every citizen in this nation should be surveilled by our government all the time. And, I've heard from law enforcement officials and I've heard from local officials who tell me that my stance is wrong. They say this is a useful law enforcement tool. It helps us solve crimes. And when people come to us and they say, we need to find this criminal who just did this horrendous thing, we need to find him fast. Sometimes the block cameras can help. I say, police have been solving crimes for centuries before flock cameras. They don't need to get lazy now. They need to do their job the old fashioned way. That's not an excuse to spy on all Americans. Second, I use the example of my living room. Sure, facial recognition on these flock cameras might help you figure out where someone is when you're trying to find them in a manhunt. But so would having a camera in my foyer so that when you come in my front door, we'd know whether or not that criminal's in my living room. At some point, just because something makes it easier and faster to solve a crime, that doesn't make it okay. Spying on all of us everywhere would make it easier to solve crimes, but we've got to draw the line somewhere. Constitutional rights are not negotiable. The fact that it makes crime easier to solve isn't an excuse. Invasion of privacy has to be stopped because it's getting worse and worse. What do you think these data centers are full of, Veronica? They're building a mass surveillance network. They're gathering too much information about the people. And if we hope to remain a free people, we've got to put a stop to that because we need to have some level of privacy as a people.
Well, okay. Well, now I don't like flock cameras because you've scared me, Keith. Okay. Well, we had Byron Donalds was here last week, and I went to an event, and great speech, but his staff forgot to tell him he was in veteran country, and we have 1.5 million veterans here in Florida, and here in your district, we've got a lot of military presence with Tyndall Air Force Base, with the home of the F-22, where the schoolhouse, the Air Battle Manager's first Air Force overseeing the protection of the United States. Plus, we have the Naval Base that has a dive center, and they're always working on new technologies with mines. So tell me how you're going to fight for these bases because, to me, they're very, very important, and we're a huge economic driver for this county here. It's the number one economic driver as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a veteran. I come from a family of veterans. I know you do. And I think that's important. It's important because one of the reasons we live in such a bright red district is that we have so many veterans. Certainly, we have veterans from all stripes here in our district, but it's hard to be a patriot who loves your country and be anything other than a Republican lately. I think I saw the joke recently in the last presidential election that if you drive by someone's house and they've got an American flag out front, you know they're a Republican because the Democrats aren't going to be doing that most of the
So
time.
true.
And so, you know, patriotism and serving our nation in uniform, those things really go hand in hand. Our nation made a lot of promises to veterans, and we need to make sure that we uphold those promises when it relates to the federal government. So, certainly, as your next congressman, I'm going to be working in Congress to ensure that we fund our military, that we keep our bases strong, that we expand our mission here for the military bases we have, because we've got some really unique assets here. And additionally, I want to make sure that we take care of the veterans who served our nation, who made massive sacrifices, often getting injured in service of our nation. We need to fund the VA and ensure that our government upholds the promises made to these patriots.
And you and I want budget cuts, of course, but I want the defense budget to be huge. And we've got like the largest defense budget ever put forward. But I feel like the Democrats that were in office cut a lot of things. We don't have enough Navy ships. Keith, of course, we've got all of this drone technology now that, Ukraine has been very successful. And we want to always keep one step ahead of China when it comes to defense. So will you as a former veteran ensure that we continue to run with that football and have a huge defense budget because we've got to be the leader when it comes to these kind of things and having a strong military.
Yeah, I mean, certainly we need to have a massive defense budget. The president's put forward the largest defense budget in US history, and I would be in favor of that, but there's so much more to it than just how big the budget is. It's how are we spending our money? Because I can tell you, when I served in the Army, often I would think about the massive contracts that were being given out to some of these contractors, huge, hundreds of billions of dollars for some of these contractors, and then the equipment we would get in the Army was not the best sometimes. And I've seen a lot of waste. I think that there's a lot we can do to take better care of the people that are serving in uniform and spend our money more wisely on some of these weapon systems. You mentioned ships. We haven't been fielding ships at an adequate rate for decades. It's not new, but no one seems to be taking that seriously. They don't understand that China's building ships way faster than we are. They have been for a long time. We got to get started. We got to solve these problems immediately because it's not like we can just have a vote tomorrow, say we're building more ships, and then they roll off the assembly line. It takes a long time to get ships designed and in the water. So we've got to get started. We are already behind.
So, well, I'm happy about this. Go Navy as an Air Force person. Go Navy, of course. But the Supreme Court I'm so disappointed in their birthright citizenship ruling. And I guess, they're saying that if you come from China and you're a tourist or you're here illegally and you had a baby, that baby is automatically an American. And I guess, as a congressman, if you could rally your people, we could push some legislation that could overturn this, but it's got to come from you. And Keith, I just don't feel that these people, when you have a baby and you came here illegally, that baby should be, an American. I just wrote an op-ed on it. I had my son in Germany, and I didn't consider him a German of two American parents. I'm very upset by this ruling because now, if I was Chinese, and I think we've had over 1 million babies born here that went back to China that someday are going to come on their American passport, that like it's a security concern to me if you just start there.
It's a massive security concern. It's a massive budget concern. And it's a concern of common sense and basic fairness. Someone coming to our nation to have a baby does not mean they should give birth to a U.S. citizen. Obviously, people who are here illegally, those children should not be considered U.S. citizens. But even people that are visiting legally, people that come here on a tourist visa, like a lot of these Chinese women are doing, they're coming here for a week or two, having a child, and then going right back to the CCP. They're going to raise those children and indoctrinate them as communists. But when they turn 18, they're eligible to vote in U.S. elections. We'll be mailing absentee ballots by the millions to
To
Beijing.
China.
How insane is that?
No. I mean, I definitely don't want that.
No, we've got a lot of work to do. And as you mentioned, a lot of it can be done in Congress with legislation. We can stop a lot of these problems in Congress, but we've got to act. It seems to me that for decades, Congress gets distracted. They focus on all these things that aren't big deals, and then they omit the things that are really big deals, like the budget, defense, and something as straightforward and important as who is an American. We can't allow our enemies to overthrow us at the ballot box just because they can outpopulate us and raise their children in communist China. Birthright citizenship is going to have to get fixed really fast.
Okay. Well, I want you to do that for me. So that's one of the things I need you to fight for when you go there. And the other issue that I want some legislation on is, we just had a primary in New York and DC and Colorado, and all these communist people that are pretending to be Democrats won the primary. So I need you to go to Congress. And one of the things I want change is if you are a Mondami that's only been in America for 8 or 9 years, or an Ilhan Omar, I don't want them running for any office, local, federal, whatever, until you've been in this country for at least 20 years, because these people are un-American and they're in these important offices, which I don't even know how they got voted in. Well, I guess because they're offering free stuff. Could you author some legislation that makes it so you have to be in America for 20 plus years before you run for office, Keith? This is very important to me.
It is, but you asked an important question. How did Mamdani get voted into office? I'll tell you how. Foreign born people were the primary
Yeah.
voters who voted for Mamdani. If you looked at the breakdown after that New York election, I studied who voted for who. Native born Americans, they voted for someone else. The people that are foreign immigrants, who are now almost half the population or more of New York, they are the ones that voted overwhelmingly for the foreign communist, Mamdani. So what does that tell you? That tells you that we have admitted far too many people to our nation. We have too many people admitted through our legal immigration system. Obviously, on the Republican side at least, we all agree that we've got to stop illegal immigration. And President Trump has closed the border. He's stopped the illegal immigration. He's still working tirelessly to evict those invaders that came in under the treasonous Biden administration. And he's setting that thing right. There's more to do, though. Currently, we admit too many legal immigrants, and we've been doing it for decades. We've admitted far too many of them, and that's why we see a lack of assimilation. Mamdani is the primary example that we can see right now, where someone came to our country, escaped a country that was an absolute disaster, and then he brought his broken third world paradigm to New York City, and he seeks to implement it here in America. So rather than assimilating and adopting our culture and learning how to join American society, he's trying to essentially change American society into the broken third world nation he escaped from. It's mind boggling.
Well, I'm very frustrated by it, and so that was a question. So this morning, ICE is up in Maine, and they've been arresting these criminals, and they're going after the really bad, I'd say bad boys, that have hurt and killed and raped Americans, and we had a civilian, details haven't fully come out, but tried to run over ICE agents again and ended up dead. I fully support ICE and their work, and I know when you go to Congress, you'll continue to do that, Keith. I mean, is this not frustrating that this is happening again, and people think ICE is the bad guys when they're really, these men and women are arresting the real bad guys?
Well, that's the thing is we've let this narrative go unchallenged. We've let so-called sanctuary cities and sanctuary states exist. The officials in sanctuary cities and sanctuary states that obstruct federal law enforcement as they seek to enforce federal law, those people should be arrested and prosecuted just like they would be for harboring any other federal fugitive. We need to start doing that because otherwise they're going to keep stirring the flames and causing people to fight against federal law enforcement as they seek to enforce the law. This shouldn't be controversial. And frankly, it shouldn't be limited just to the so-called worst of the worst and the dangerous criminals. If you're in our nation illegally, you don't need to commit another crime. You committed a crime when you came across that border and you need to be deported. I understand the need to prioritize some of the most dangerous, but we shouldn't be focused only on them. We should be deporting each and every illegal. If you want to come to our nation lawfully. Do the right thing, join our society, don't try to overthrow our country, and certainly don't obstruct law enforcement when they get around to enforcing our laws.
I love that, and I stand with you on that as well. So, affordability is one of our biggest problems, and actually, when you look at it closely, the reason a lot of rents are up because these illegals are staying in these rental places. So how can you fight for us? Because I'm sure that's one of the big issues that our voters are telling you, and we desperately need. The gas prices to come down too. I was at Shell Island over 4th of July, Keith, and this man that owns a tree business, cutting down trees, he does quite well. He said that he's paying 4,000 a week to run his equipment with gas, and it's really hurting the bottom line.
Yeah, certainly affordability is an issue for all of us. Everything costs more. But when you talk about the housing part and how it is affected by illegal immigration, it's a basic supply and demand issue. We only have so many houses in this country, and only so many are going to be built each year. Builders just can't build an infinite number of houses per year. It takes time, right? So if you've got a fixed number of houses and a small additional amount of houses that are coming on the market each year, but then you add an extra 20 or 30 million people to the pot, what's going to happen? Now there's more people that need houses, almost the same number of houses exist. The cost of housing goes through the roof. That's exactly what we saw happen. When Biden admitted tens of millions of illegals, we saw the costs of housing go up. I saw a recent study that was released by the federal government, and it showed that 20 to 30% of the housing price increase can be attributed to illegal immigration. It's simple. I think everybody with common sense understands this. If you get rid of some of the people that are living in our country illegally, we will need fewer houses, and that means less competition when young families are trying to buy a home. Right now, young families trying to buy their first home are being outbid by illegal aliens who are working under the table, taking cash jobs, and they shouldn't even be here.
Very true. Okay. On international, a question I want to ask you is Iran. Trump tried so hard to get this to the finish line. And end this conflict with a ceasefire, but I don't think we're dealing with normal people on the other end, sadly.
No.
So how do you see Iran? Because this is what everybody's like. This is why the Republicans are going to lose the midterms because you know we've got a conflict still going on. Strait of Hormuz is still a problem, which I saw today. Trump was saying he might charge people to go through this Strait of Hormuz. I mean, how do we handle these people? We just started bombing them again. Off the record, the name is called Operation Bitch Slap, which I thought was hysterical. But I think that's the only way that these people get it is by when we drop, hit 90 targets every single day. Keith, how do you see Iran right now?
None of us want another war. I think we all saw the war in the Middle East and how unfortunate that entire experience was. None of us want to see that again. I'm sure President Trump doesn't want to see this again. That's why he gives the Iranians an off ramp constantly. He's had talk after talk after talk and given them all these opportunities. He's tried to negotiate a ceasefire constantly. But the truth is this: they want to kill Americans, they want to kill President Trump. They're not going to stop until we stop them. So the only question Americans really need to ask themselves is, are you okay with Iran getting a nuclear weapon or not? Do you really want to give your grandchildren a world where Iran has a nuclear weapon? This is not a normal state actor. This is not like most countries that you can negotiate with. These people have a theological perspective. They are religiously motivated, and they believe it is their mission from God to murder us. That's not the sort of person you can negotiate with. And God bless him, President Trump keeps on trying to negotiate with these people, and they keep breaking their word. They agreed to a ceasefire, and then what do you know? The next day they're shooting ships again. And then he says, okay, I'm going to give you another chance, another ceasefire. They agree, and then what do? They shoot another ship.
Yeah.
At some point, we've just got to obliterate these people, because if they keep doing this, there's no other answer. They're not getting the message. I know we don't want another war. I don't want another war. The reality is we might not have a choice. I think it was, said in many, many times in the past that, hey, you can have peace tomorrow if you're willing to surrender. I'm not willing to surrender the idea that Iran can have a nuclear weapon. We can never allow
Yeah.
that because it will be a massive disaster. People talk about the cost in lives and in dollars, and it's going to be significant. It's always significant. It'll be worse if we let them get a nuclear weapon.
No, I agree. So would you support boots on the ground? I mean, I personally would, because I don't think these people they're not rational. When you kill your own citizens, thousands and thousands, they're not rational, Keith.
I think we always draw this distinction when we talk about foreign conflicts and we think we can do things without boots on the ground. It's almost always impossible if we're being realistic. Anybody that tells you otherwise just isn't thinking about it thoroughly. It doesn't matter what we do from the air. At the end of the day, they had massive underground facilities that were enriching uranium, that were building nuclear weapons components. Okay, so we blew up those things from the air. It's still buried underground. We can't leave that stuff behind and let them dig it up. We're going to have to put boots on the ground. We're going to go have to dig that stuff up. And if we learn anything from Afghanistan, we should know they're going to try to shoot at us and kill us while we're doing that. And we're going to lose some people. And it's going to be tragic. And it's going to expand the conflict, most likely. This isn't going to be easy and it's not going to be fast. We're just going to have to accept that as a nation, that we have a choice. Let them get a nuclear weapon or do what it takes to stop them. It's really as simple as that.
Hmm. Love it. And so on your website, when it comes to Ukraine, you don't want to give them another penny. And a lot of Americans, we feel that way because we've given so much. And then, I personally feel like NATO needs to step up because they've been kind of lazy in this whole conflict. Do you think we're going to ever get this, 4-year plus a conflict with Russia and Ukraine over? And I stand with you because I think we've given a lot to Ukraine, Keith.
Well, the way you phrase it, are we ever going to get it over? Probably not, but it's not our problem. It's not
Right.
our job to get it over with. Where this conflict is right on Europe's doorstep. Well, zoom out a moment. We've been covering defense costs for basically all of Europe for decades. American taxpayers have been sending their money to defend European nations. So while we've got someone waiting tables in Waffle House sending their money to the federal government in taxes, that person doesn't get free health care. But the person in France who's getting free military assistance from the United States paid for by her tax dollars, that person gets free health care from the French government. So I'm tired of subsidizing European nations that give handouts to their citizens by charging our citizens taxes. Here's what will happen. If the US says absolutely never another penny to Ukraine, Europe will come together, they'll scrape up the money, they'll figure it out, they'll pay the bills, and it's their turn to pay the bills because we've been covering their rear ends for decades.
Well, and that's part two. At one point, Secretary Rubio said he was ready to pull all the troops out, and then there was a story that came out saying Hegseth's presented a plan, doing that in our future, and then I guess Rubio has said no, we don't want to fully pull out. Do you think we need to pull out? I mean, I served 4 years in Germany. I've lived in Japan for 7, and I worked over there for 4 of those wearing a uniform. I just feel like when it comes to deterrence, we need to be in places. Do we need to be that extreme to fully pull out, Keith?
I don't think it's productive. Think about the tens of thousands of people we lost to get bases in Germany and Japan and Afghanistan and Iraq. And we closed the ones in Afghanistan and Iraq. That was a mistake.
Yes.
Doesn't mean we need to occupy Afghanistan. We don't need to occupy Iraq, but we should keep our military bases there. We should always have a presence. We shouldn't be begging neighboring countries to give us overflight privileges or to lease us a landing strip or whatever. We should, after we build those bases, maintain them permanently because we spent a lot of treasure and a lot of lives to get them. Giving them up is just foolish. We've had 2 world wars with basically the same actors. Heck no, we shouldn't pull out. We're not going to be silly enough to tempt a third.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so you're in a race. There's was it 8 people? Oh my gosh, there's too many people running, Keith. And I saw that you're number 1 on the ballot. I thought that was great. So what makes you different than everybody else? Because obviously I've interviewed a bunch of these people, and you're definitely the threat. So why are you the one that everybody needs to choose?
Well, it is an 8-way primary, and that's a huge field. That's pretty uncommon to see such a broadly populated primary field. But I'm the only person that checks several boxes. Number one, I was born and raised here in Bay County. I've lived here for years prior to running for this office. And more importantly, I judge someone based on what they've accomplished in their own life. A lot of these folks have had productive careers, often working in government and cashing government paychecks for a long time. I've written paychecks. I've built companies. I've gone from the ground up with absolutely nothing, lived the American dream, and built national companies. I've done it repeatedly. That's the sort of thing that takes a lot of determination and grit. And honestly, I think that's one of the most important things that sets me apart. I've proven that I can get things done in the private sector. Does that automatically translate to I can get things done in Congress? Not necessarily. Congress is going to be a complicated machine, and I'm not insane. I know that I'm only one person in a large room. I'm going to build coalitions because here's the other thing. You don't build a national company by yourself either. That took a lot of people all working together, rowing in the same direction. And I'm hopeful I can build a coalition of supporters and other congressmen who will work with me to get things done. The other thing is, I've self funded my race, I've self funded most of my campaign, and I've pledged to donate my salary. That's all to send a message. I can't be bought. I'm not here for the money, I'm not here for the paycheck. I'm here to pay it back, to give back to the community that's given me everything. I'm here to do the right thing.
Well, I love that because I did have one of the candidates said that you were going to DC to like double your income, which I just laughed at.
No, it'll
So,
cost me far more than I will ever make to serve in Congress. And the best way for me to increase my money would be to stay the heck out of Congress because, that's just, it's a place where I'll be under a microscope, no doubt. And there's going to be a lot of distractions. So I won't be able to focus on investments or other things. I'll be serving and donating my salary while doing it.
no, I think that's fantastic, and you truly have been dominating, Keith. I mean, I just got I think my fourth or fifth postcard in the mail. I've yet to get one from any other candidate. So no, it's been great. So how was the Fourth of July parade? I had to miss it. I was so sad, and I saw like it looked like George Washington made an appearance at your table. How was that? Because there were so many folks in our town. I think it was the biggest Fourth of July parade ever. So how were you received? Because that was definitely
It,
with the masses.
yeah, I mean, it was a great time. Obviously, America's 250th birthday is a big occasion for all of us, and it was a lot of fun. The float was great. It was hot, as you might guess. It's usually hot, but oh my goodness, it was hot. So, it was like a free workout all along the way with a free sauna. So it was wonderful to see everybody. We had a lot of supporters, and you mentioned we're doing a lot of advertising, and it's working. People are aware of the message. I'm a believer in hard work. I've worked hard for everything in my life, and I'm going to work hard for every vote in this race.
And I know you are an America First person and support President Trump. So how will you continue once you're elected in DC? Running with President Trump's football.
You know, President Trump's the first president in my lifetime that's tried to fix so many of the things where we've seen Americans undermined by the policies of DC. Foreign trade's one of the biggest areas where our government has sold us out for decades. And maybe they thought it was a good idea, maybe they had their good reasons. But the reality is, when you look back to the 1970s, one income could cover the costs to raise a family. And now, two parents working full time jobs can barely make ends meet. That's really an issue that's driven by bad foreign trade deals. We've got to rebuild this nation's manufacturing base. We've got to re energize our technology and our production and create good paying jobs so that people can live affordable lives. President Trump has made that a key issue that he's focused on, and I hope to work with him in Congress to do exactly that.
And Keith, if somebody were to ask, like, what is your leadership style that how you roll when you're running a company or serving in Congress? Is it that coalition building and kind of working with everyone?
Yeah, it's definitely coalition building. That's the only way to get anything big done. Look, you can get small tasks accomplished if you're just a hard worker running all by yourself. You can do certain things. But the bigger the task is, the more people it's going to take. Building a national company, accomplishing major legislative change in Congress, that takes dozens of people. And that's what I'm going to have to do there. I'm going to have to build coalitions. My leadership style is to roll up my sleeves, get to work, and figure out how we can all work together as a team to accomplish a common goal.
And we just celebrated America's 250th birthday, and the left has been awful. I mean, again, from the Mondami speech in front of George Washington's desk that was backwards to, these liberal people on TV saying that American flag, when they see them, they're scared, they feel threatened. And I'm the biggest patriot, having served, my nation. I just love America. So what does 250 years of a great republic that does have a love of country and the people that are that live in the USA. What does it mean to you, Keith?
I think it's a good reminder that things last as long as we hold them together. I think everybody likes to quote Ben Franklin saying, well, you've got a republic if you can keep it. That's a lot more real than people might imagine. It's not just a thing to quote. Our nation requires that we constantly repair the cracks in the foundation. Like anything else, things get off track and you've got to put them back on track. We've got to restore constitutional governance. We've got to restore the liberties that have been chipped away by a government that's thought expanding its mission was a good idea. We need a smaller government. We can't afford this much federal government. We don't need this much federal government. We need to remember that the 10th Amendment says most things should be done by the states and put things back in that direction. We've got to preserve this shining beacon on a hill. America is important in the world. It's the most free place. It's the only place where capitalism can lift someone from poverty to wealth. It's the only place where you can express free ideas. We've got to preserve this nation, and that means restoring the things that made it great. That's why being a constitutional conservative is important to me. That's why I think we need more constitutional conservatives in Congress.
I love that. And I know a lot of your family, you have a wonderful family. So what does faith and family mean to you as well?
Well, I think faith is important to all of us. We live in a district where pretty much all of us are Christians. We believe in God. And I think that really relates back to country. For a long time, God's been pulled out of schools. People say they can't pray at their sports team in an elementary school or a high school. And people have misinterpreted the First Amendment. The First Amendment says there can be no establishment of religion. That doesn't mean people are prohibited from practicing their religion. That's what the left wants people to believe, but that's not what it was intended to mean. It means the government can't force you to practice a particular set of religious beliefs. It means that the government shouldn't legislate certain religious matters. It should stay out of those matters. That doesn't mean that someone like a high school coach is forbidden from praying with their team if the team chooses to participate. It just means the coach shouldn't force those kids to participate if they don't want to. It's about freedom. Freedom of religion is one of the important principles our nation was founded on. Contrast that with the Sharia law that we're seeing happen in a lot of areas. A lot of people that have moved to our nation recently in far larger numbers than should have ever been allowed. They're trying to build these Sharia law cities, and they're trying to take over places like Dearborn, Michigan, and parts of Texas. Enacting Sharia law is a clear violation of that freedom of religion because Sharia law is more than just Muslim religion. It's a system of government. Our government should always ensure freedom of religion for everyone, and that means Sharia law is unconstitutional, no matter how you slice it.
Well, yeah, we definitely don't need that taking over America. Okay, so as we wrap, Keith, why should people vote for you?
Well, vote for me because I am running to represent you. I will never sell us out to special interest groups or lobbyists. I am running for one reason, and that is to represent my home district, to do the right thing, and to chip away at the size and scope of the federal government so that life's more affordable and we get Washington out of our wallets.
I love it. And we can follow you, I know, on keithgross.com. And then you're on X as well. You're on Instagram, Keith. I want to thank you for coming back to Veronica Live.
Thanks so much. It was good to be with you. And early voting is happening really soon. Absentee ballots are already out there. Early voting opens, the state mandated voting days open on August 8th, and the polls close on Election Day on August 18th. So tell everybody they've got to show up and vote. We live in a bright red district. The Republican nominee will win in November. We've got to choose the best Republican nominee, and that's here in August.
Well, good luck and God bless. And I want to thank everyone for joining Veronica Live. I'm America's Conservative Warrior. You can follow me on OBBM Network TV and also my podcast, Veronica Live, on Spotify and iTunes. And we're well on to 2 million downloads, so keep it coming. And I'm also on X at Veronica Talk. So God bless everyone. We'll catch you next time.